Chapter 1, Spring 1922, Bozeman, Montana. The train's steam whistle sounded urgently as it approached the crossing. Bouncing toward the same intersection at breakneck speed, a faded black Ford Model T spit mud from under creaking fenders as it balked and twisted down a rutted road. Passengers leaned out the train's windows, shouting and whistling as the Model T careened over the track seconds ahead of the rushing locomotive. The train whistle kept up a shrill protest. Cheering and clapping erupted aboard the rail coach. "The horseless carriage won again," someone yelled. The driver of the Model T, Roy Corbin, drove with vengeance. Next to him, his wife, Sarah Corbin, braced herself as they bounced and swerved toward the train depot. This was no sporting event. She looked instead at the bundled-up child on her lap. This was the reason for their trip. Sarah Corbin remembered 2 years earlier when the physician had entered the barren hospital room. A fatherly voice could not mask his cruel words. "Mrs. Corbin, regrettably your child is born with deficiencies." Sarah gasped. The words gutted her mind. What did he mean, deficiencies? She struggled to understand. "Is he not right?" she pleaded. The doctor paused. I'm sorry, get some rest. We'll talk later." "Doctor, what do you mean, deficiencies?" "Mrs. Corbin, please, you've been through—" "I want my baby. He's mine," Sarah interrupted bitterly. "I carried him for 9 months. Now I'm strong enough to hold him. Get my baby now." The doctor nodded sadly. "Just one moment." Soon a nurse in a starched blouse brought in a wrapped bundle and placed it awkwardly in Sarah's arms. My baby, Sarah thought, cradling the child. She reached weakly and pulled aside the blanket. Her bottom lip quivered. "Oh no," she gasped. The baby's expressionless face looked like a caricature placed on top of the tiny, twisted body. His eyes were little brown orbs, frozen in hollow gaze. His lips squeezed tightly askew under some hidden tension. A numb and haunted emptiness filled the room. Sarah hugged the bundle, hoping that soon the quietness might disappear along with his twisted appearance. The nurse waited patiently. "Please leave us alone," Sarah said, her voice breaking with her heart. As the nurse's retreating steps echoed down the hallway, Sarah stared at her son again. Where were the tiny round cheeks, the delicate lips, the button nose? Wasn't every baby supposed to be perfect? Sarah fought the sick churning in her stomach as she studied the misshapen features. Her husband Roy should have been there, but they had not expected the baby this early. Roy was hauling a load of cattle back from Miles City. Sarah hugged the baby to her breast and cried silently into the nothingness that surrounded her. She wanted to curl up on her side in a fetal position and be a young child again with a mother to hold her, wipe her tears, and kiss away her hurt. But she knew that a 36-year-old, she was the mother now, and no one could kiss away the doctor's terrible words. She and Roy had decided to call their third child Petey if he was a boy. Now Sarah tried out the name. "Petey," she cooed. The name tasted strange. "Come on, Petey," she begged, but the baby stillness spread throughout the room. The jolting of the Model T brought other memories. The doctor's diagnosis held no concession. "Children such as this rarely respond to treatment," he said. Still, after leaving the hospital, Sarah had not given up hope. In matters such as this, even the words of God became suspect. This was not the Dark Ages. This was 1922, the age of modern medicine. Every day, doctors performed miracles. Couldn't someone perform a miracle on Petey? A costly trip to a specialist in Boot, however, confirmed the diagnosis. "Mr. and Mrs. Corbin," said the impeccably dressed doctor, standing in his lavish office.
Walking around like a goon.
"We have here a severe case of feeble-mindedness. As an idiot, any rehabilitative efforts would be futile." "What do you mean, idiot?" Sarah had stammered. "The child has no capacity whatsoever for even minimal sensory appreciation. My recommendation, however difficult, would be to admit him to an institution that could provide for his care." Sarah protested. "No, this is my son, my Petey. This isn't the malfunction of some machine. No one is taking Petey away, no one." To cement that decision, the Corbins baptized Petey at the old Lutheran church in town. With light pouring through tall stained glass windows, the preacher had ended the service by saying, "They who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength." They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Soon after months of seizures, 2 years of sleepless nights, 2 years of feeding, cleaning, and holding Petey, many townsfolk and neighbors called it wasted effort, but every day Sarah spent herself on the child. She closed her eyes now in the Model T and leaned her head backward, hearing again the many comments from the neighbors. If I were you, I'd take him to the specialist in Salt Lake. Do you pray for him each night? What tonic did you use for your flu last year? Perhaps you lifted too heavy. Where were those people? Where were these people when night after night she or Roy had sat with Petey, scared his next seizure might be fatal? Many avoided greeting her when she brought Petey to town. Slowly the medical bills had grown. They had sold everything, including their small ranch, until nothing remained for medicine or visits to the doctor. It hurt watching little 8-year-old Billy and his 10-year-old sister Kathy leave for school wearing donated clothes several sizes too large. Would they ever have toys, ice cream cones, or go to the country fair like other children? Why don't you love us like you do, Petey? Little Billy blurted out one day. That day a decision was forced on the family. That day was the reason for this trip to Bozeman to give up Petey. Petey was being sent to Warm Springs Insane Asylum in Warm Springs, Montana. A washout in the road bounced Petey's head as they pulled into the Northern Pacific train depot, a small brick building on the edge of Bozeman. The vacant expression on Petey's face often grew more distant. The county health nurse met them there. Her soft, sandy hair framed a kind face, but her white, starched vest fit like armor over her blue blouse. Sarah had expected someone older. Please take good care of him, Sarah pleaded, extending Petey hesitantly. He seemed so much heavier today. I will, the nurse answered softly, cuddling the unresponsive child. I will. Sarah remembered their pastor's words. As important as burying one's dead, so was it necessary to let unfortunates like Petey slip from their lives and memories. Sarah reached out and traced her fingers gently across the odd curves of Petey's bent little body. Then a sob broke through her composure, and Roy led her back to the car. The county health nurse squirmed to get her comfortable on the wooden train seat, worn smooth by years of use. She wiped mucus from the infant's twisted mouth and nose, his swollen and coiled tongue bunched into one cheek. The chore of delivering wards of the state to the insane asylum in Warm Springs was the responsibility of the county sheriff. Whenever the ward was a child, however, the sheriff asked a nurse to handle the transfer. Carrying a deformed baby probably wasn't very sheriff-like. The nurse reached and pulled commitment papers from a large brown envelope in her day bag. Glancing briefly through the evaluation, she saw the obvious described in lengthy and complex statements. Shuffling the papers back together, she noticed the ward's name, Petey Roy Corbin. Can I sit beside you? Asked a kindly voice. The county health nurse looked up to find a tall, stately woman. Judging by her beautiful silver hair, the woman was over 60. A brown silk blouse matched her long skirt. Please do, the nurse replied. The woman breathed a sigh of relief as she settled herself onto the wooden seat. Here, let me help you with your bag, the nurse offered. As she reached forward, the baby's blanket fell aside and exposed Petey's distorted expression. Saliva ran freely out the side of his gaping mouth. Oh, for heaven's sake, exclaimed the older lady. She jumped to her feet and grabbed her bag. He won't hurt you, assured the nurse. Still, the woman fled down the aisle. The nurse shook her head as the rail car jolted. She braced her hand against the next seat as the locomotive hissed and ground its way grudgingly away from the depot. Soon the train echoed a rhythmic and endless click-clack, click-clack. The sound grew louder whenever someone opened one of the wooden doors to pass between cars. A breeze kicked up, sending dust devils spinning and dancing out across the fields next to the tracks. Pungent smells of sagebrush and an occasional whiff of coal smoke from the locomotive drifted through the open windows. Tucking the blanket tightly around the pitiful infant, the nurse settled in for the long ride. Life sure threw you a curveball, she whispered. It's a good thing you can't think.
But she won't. Maybe